The email hit my inbox at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Subject line, "I owe you an apology." I didn't open it right away. I was standing in my kitchen in Boise, coffee getting cold in my hands, looking out at the mountains beyond the suburbs. The sender's name was Victor Kessler. I hadn't heard from Victor in 7 years. 7 years since the day he told me I would never amount to anything. Let me back up. My name is Mark Castellano. I'm 54 years old now. For 31 years straight, I worked for a company called Northridge Manufacturing. You probably haven't heard of it. They make precision-engineered components for medical devices, industrial equipment and aerospace applications. Specialized, high-value stuff. I helped build that business from absolute ground up. I started at Northridge in 1992. I was 23 years old, fresh out of community college with a degree in mechanical engineering technology and a genuine willingness to work nights. It was the best opportunity I could imagine at the time. The company had 47 employees then, occupying maybe 12,000 square feet of warehouse space in a light industrial park in suburban Portland, in an older building that needed maintenance. Victor Kessler was already the owner. He'd started the place in 1985 with some savings and an idea. But by 1992, he had a major, urgent problem. His manufacturing process was a complete mess. Quality control was wildly inconsistent. Delivery times were unpredictable, sometimes ahead of schedule, sometimes wildly behind. Clients were leaving. He was hemorrhaging money and he was starting to panic. He was hemorrhaging money. I came in as a production technician, minimum wage, night shift. I was young and hungry, but I paid attention. I watched how the machines were being used, or more accurately, how they were being misused. I watched how materials were being stored inefficiently, how orders were being scheduled without any system, how quality issues were being caught way too late in the process after expensive work had already been done wrong. By month 3, I'd written a comprehensive 30-page document detailing every inefficiency I'd seen, analyzing the costs and proposing solutions, single-spaced, with drawings and calculations. I left it on Victor's desk on a Friday before my night shift, nervous about what would happen. He didn't fire me, he promoted me. Within 6 months, I was the head of production. By 1995, I was running all operations for the entire company. Victor stayed focused on sales and client relationships, which is what he was genuinely good at. I focused on making the machine run efficiently and reliably, which is what I was good at. And we worked together in that productive division of labor for the next 28 years. Over the next 3 decades, I rebuilt that operation from top to bottom. I implemented lean manufacturing principles before they had a fancy name. I negotiated better supplier contracts. I retrained the entire manufacturing team. I introduced computer-aided quality control systems when most competitors were still using clipboards and paper logs. I hired good people, people I could trust to care about precision. And I kept them because I paid them fairly and treated them like professionals. I remember hiring Sarah's brother Mike in 1998 when he was 19 years old and completely lost. He dropped out of high school. He had no direction. Nobody expected much from him. But I believed he had something. I taught him how to run the CNC machines. I invested time in him. By 2015, he was my production floor supervisor, running an entire shift, managing people, responsible for quality on millions of dollars worth of customer orders. That's the kind of loyalty you build when you treat people like they matter. We sent him and his wife to Hawaii when they got married. We showed up to his kids' birthdays. There were 2 major crises during those 31 years that nearly destroyed everything. The first was in 2003, when a critical supplier went bankrupt without warning. We suddenly lost our source for a specialized titanium alloy we needed for our medical device clients. We had 47 days of inventory left and no backup supplier. Our biggest client alone needed deliveries for the next 90 days. If we couldn't fulfill those contracts, we'd lose them forever. They'd go to competitors who could maintain supply. I spent 3 weeks straight, not sleeping much, not going home much, negotiating with 3 different companies to establish new supply chains, personally guaranteeing payment terms that Victor didn't fully understand we were committing to. Some of those terms would have bankrupted us if the suppliers had demanded payment up front. If that failed, Northridge would have defaulted on contracts worth $1.2 million. I thought about all of it constantly. But we found a supplier, a company in Germany that could ramp up production. We made it through. By some miracle, we made it through. And I never told Victor how close we'd actually come to the edge. How many nights I spent lying awake wondering if I'd miscalculated, wondering if the new supplier would fail, wondering if we'd survive. The second crisis was in 2008, right in the middle of the recession. Nobody was buying anything. The medical device companies we depended on froze all their orders. We went from operating at 85% capacity to 30%. I had to lay off 40 people. I did it personally. I met with each person individually. I explained why. I explained what severance we could offer. I cried in my office after each conversation. I'd hired most of these people. I knew their names. I knew their lives. But we had to make it through, and I was the one who could see what needed to happen before Victor could. We cut expenses significantly. I took a 20% pay cut myself to help the company survive without laying off even more people. It took months, but we made it. By 2010, we were hiring again. Some of the same people came back. By 2020, Northridge was generating $42 million in annual revenue. We had 164 employees across 2 facilities. Our client list included 3 of the 5 largest medical device manufacturers in the country. Our reputation for reliability and on-time delivery was flawless. I know because I'd built that reputation. Victor had become a very wealthy man because of the systems and culture I'd constructed. He liked to tell the story of how he'd found me as a kid at night school and given me a chance. Except that wasn't really how it happened. I'd given myself a chance. I'd just done it on his property. By 2023, something had changed in Victor. He was 56 years old. He'd been approached about selling the company multiple times. He started talking about legacy and bigger vision and scaling the operation. What that actually meant was he wanted to bring in outside consultants, modern guys, people with MBAs from schools I'd never heard of. One of those modern guys was named Derek Paulson. Derek was 34 years old. He had a consulting degree from Wharton. He wore tailored shirts and had the kind of confidence that comes from never having failed at anything important. Victor hired him in March 2023 as a strategic operations advisor. Derek's strategy was to change everything I'd built. He wanted to relocate one of our facilities to a lower-cost area, Tennessee maybe, or Mexico. He wanted to automate more of the production to cut labor costs, never mind that our employees had families and had been with us for an average of 12 years. He wanted to speed up production timelines to increase throughput, never mind that precision engineering doesn't work well when you're rushing. In one meeting, Derek actually said that our commitment to on-time delivery was artificially constraining our margins, as if the contracts we'd built our reputation on were somehow an obstacle instead of an asset. He wanted to replace our supply chain relationships, the ones I'd personally built over decades, with transactional vendors that could offer better pricing. He didn't understand that those relationships were insurance. They were reliability. They were the thing that let us promise our clients that their orders would be perfect and on time. I watched this happen for 8 months. I went to meetings. I presented data. I explained why what we'd built worked specifically because it was built on stability and consistency and people who cared about the work. Derek would nod, and Victor would nod, and then they'd implement Derek's ideas anyway. I watched as Derek started having private meetings with Victor that I wasn't invited to. I watched as Victor stopped asking for my input on major decisions. I watched as Derek started referring to our manufacturing philosophy as legacy thinking and suggesting that maybe I was part of the problem rather than the solution. By the end of 2023, I had something else going on. For 3 years, I'd been working on an idea on the side, not at the office, nights and weekends. I had a home office, just a desk in my basement, and I'd been developing a software platform for quality control and production scheduling that could be licensed to small and medium-sized manufacturers like the ones we served. It wasn't a general business software. It was hyper-specific to precision manufacturing. It did things off-the-shelf software couldn't do because I'd engineered it with 31 years of accumulated knowledge about what actually works in the real world. Not theory, reality. Every single feature came from a real problem I'd personally solved at Northridge. The predictive analytics module was built because I'd spent a decade learning how to predict when machines would drift before they actually drifted, before defects happened. The quality flagging system was built because I'd watched too many defects slip through due to poor communication between the floor and the planning office. I knew the gaps because I'd lived them. I'd never mentioned it to Victor. I'd tested it quietly with a consultant at 2 small manufacturing firms outside Portland. It worked perfectly. The feedback was ecstatic. One of them said, "This is the most useful tool we've ever implemented. Why isn't every shop using this?" The other said something similar. "I've never seen software that actually understands how we work." That was the moment I knew I had something real, not a hobby, not a side project. A real business opportunity, something that could actually matter. On November 7th, 2023, Victor called me into his office. I remember the drive to work that day. I could already feel something shifting, like the air pressure before a storm. Victor's office was on the 2nd floor, overlooking the production floor. You could see everything from there, the machines running, people working, the whole operation that I'd spent 3 decades building. There was a long table, a leather chair for Victor, regular chairs for everyone else. Derek was already there when I arrived, sitting in one of those chairs. My stomach dropped immediately. Derek didn't usually sit in on my one-on-one meetings with Victor. When someone unexpected is in the room during a meeting you weren't told about, you already know something's wrong. Victor told me to close the door. "Mark, you've been an incredible asset to this company," he started. "This is how people fire you. They butter you up first. 31 years is a long time. You've given a lot to Northridge." His voice had a careful tone to it, like he'd rehearsed this. Maybe he had. Maybe Derek had coached him. Not everyone gets to be part of building something from nothing. "Thank you, Victor," I said. I wasn't sure where this was going, but my hands were resting on my thighs and I was aware of every muscle in my shoulders. My mouth had gone dry. I'd had a cup of coffee at 6 a.m, and now I was thinking about that coffee, which was a sign that the rest of my brain was not handling whatever was happening here. "Here's the thing," he said, leaning back in his chair, looking comfortable, which meant he'd already made the decision. "The landscape has changed. The business landscape. We need to be leaner, we need to be faster, we need people who understand modern manufacturing theory. We need to make decisions without having to fight historical precedent." Derek was watching me the way a college kid watches a laboratory experiment. He had a small smile on his face. "Victor, I understand. That's why I've been pushing back on some of the operational changes Derek's proposed. Because the way we're moving will compromise our—" "That's actually part of it," Victor interrupted. "Derek feels like you're resisting progress, that you're protective of the way things have always been done. He thinks there's friction between your approach and where the company needs to go." "With respect," I said, "I'm not resisting progress. I'm resisting poorly considered changes that will damage what we've built. There's a difference. The machines we work with have precision tolerances that don't forgive rushing. The people we work with have families that depend on steady income. The suppliers we work with have relationships we've built over decades. Those aren't obstacles to progress. Those are the foundation of progress." Victor shifted in his chair. "I've made a decision. We're going to be bringing in a new operations director. Your role is being eliminated. I understood immediately what he wasn't saying. "You're letting me go," I said. "We're restructuring. Your role is being eliminated." It's funny how they train you to use passive language when you're doing something mean. His role is being eliminated. Not, "You're fired." Not, "I'm choosing Derek's theory over 3 decades of actual results." The passive voice was supposed to make it sound like nobody was responsible. I sat there for a moment. 3 decades. 3 decades of 60-hour weeks. 3 decades of driving company decisions that had made Victor a multimillionaire. 3 decades of solving problems, building systems, developing people. I thought about Mike, my brother-in-law, who I'd trained and promoted to supervisor. I thought about the 2008 crisis, when I'd taken a 20% pay cut to keep the company afloat so that 124 people wouldn't lose their jobs. I thought about all the loyalty I'd given, and I felt strangely detached, like I was watching this happen to somebody else, like this wasn't quite real at all. "I understand," I said. I honestly felt oddly calm. "What does the severance package look like?" 3 months of salary plus your accrued benefits. We're continuing your health insurance for 6 months at company expense. Derek will work with HR on the exact details. You can clean out your office today. We'd like you gone by end of business. 3 months. $42,000 before taxes, which meant maybe $28,000 in my hand. Sarah made good money, but we had a mortgage and 2 kids in college. I did the maths in my head automatically, the habit of 3 decades managing Northridge's finances. "Can I ask," I said, "what was the trigger? What made you decide this was the moment?" Victor looked at Derek, then back at me. "We had a strategic planning session with Derek and other leadership. The consensus is we're stronger moving forward without the legacy structures that have defined our operations. You understand." I understood completely. They were using consultancy language to justify pushing out the person who actually understood how the company worked, so they could impose theories without contradiction. They wanted to move fast. I wanted to move carefully. And in Victor's mind, careful had become the enemy. "Okay," I said. "One more thing. I have an idea I've been developing on my own time. A software platform for manufacturing quality control and production scheduling. It's completely separate from Northridge, but I think you might be interested in licensing it. It could help with the operational improvements Derek wants to implement. It would give you the tools to move faster while actually maintaining quality." Victor leaned forward slightly. For half a second I thought this might change something. For half a second I thought maybe the fact that I had something of my own might actually matter to him. Maybe he'd realize he was making a mistake. "What kind of idea?" he asked. "A proprietary software system for production scheduling and quality management. Predictive analytics to forecast machine problems before they happen. Real-time quality monitoring and flagging. I've tested it for 3 years with actual customers. 2 companies outside of Northridge have used it, and both want to keep using it beyond the testing period. Both have asked what I'd charge for licensing." Derek laughed. Actually laughed out loud. It was a laugh that said, "You're leaving and now you're trying to sell us something? You're already thinking about yourself?" It was a laugh that turned the moment into something small and sad. "Mark," Derek said, still smiling, "software is not a manufacturing business. You don't know how to build a software company. You know how to manage assembly lines. There's a reason people go to business school for 10 years before they try something like this." "I know that," I said. "Which is why—" "Here's the thing," Derek interrupted. "The market for manufacturing software is flooded. There are dozens of platforms out there. SAP, Siemens Opcenter, Parsable. You think you're going to go up against companies that have thousands of engineers and unlimited resources?" He leaned back in his chair, looking completely confident. "You'd be competing against actual software companies with billions in backing." Victor was nodding along like Derek was making a profound point. I watched his head bob slightly, and I felt something crystallize inside me. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. It was the understanding that nothing I said would matter. The decision had already been made. It wasn't about my idea. The decision was about something else entirely. I stood up slowly. "I appreciate you both hearing me out," I said, and I walked out of Victor's office for the last time. That moment, Derek's laugh, Victor's passive acceptance, should have broken me. I expected it to break me. I thought in that moment, walking out of that office, that I might never recover from it. The rejection after 31 years, the dismissal of my idea, the feeling that I'd given everything to a company and a person, and it hadn't been enough. Instead, it freed me. I spent the next 18 months building Castellano manufacturing systems. Rachel, my daughter, became my first employee. She was 27, working in marketing at a tech company in Seattle. And when I called her and explained the software and the vision, I asked her if she'd be willing to take a risk on her dad. She quit her job. She moved back to Boise. She became part of building something from nothing. David became my second employee. He was a friend's son, 24 years old, with some coding experience but mainly raw ambition and a willingness to learn. Together, the three of us worked from my basement office, running everything from customer onboarding to technical support to data management. We started onboarding customers in August 2024. Meridian Manufacturing came on first. They'd heard about the platform and reached out. Then by September, Harman Industries signed on. By October, Simon Technologies came on board. Word spread among manufacturers. Other shops heard that we understood their problems in ways that other software companies simply didn't. That we weren't trying to be everything to everyone. We were being exactly what they needed. By early 2025, I'd saved enough to hire support staff. By April, Patricia Valdez from a manufacturing association reached out. She'd heard about my software. Her association represented 1,200 manufacturers across the country. She wanted to offer it to her entire network. She said she believed in what I'd built, that it solved problems no other software was even addressing. In May 2025, exactly 18 months after walking out of Northridge Manufacturing, I signed a partnership agreement with Patricia's association. The contract was contingent on me being able to handle their volume, which meant I needed to professionalize everything about Castellano manufacturing systems. I spent $50,000 on proper server infrastructure. I hired 3 new contractors, a support person, a technical integration specialist, and someone to handle billing and client management. I moved the company out of my basement and into a small office space in Boise, about 2,000 square feet, with room to grow. I remember walking through that empty office for the first time and thinking about Northridge's original 12,000 square feet in Portland. I'd helped build that into something massive. Now I was building something new, sized for what we actually needed right now. By September 2025, Patricia's association sent out the announcement about the partnership. By October, we had 47 new customers across her network. By November, another 36. By December, another 41. We were adding 30 to 40 new customers every single month. The company was growing faster than I could keep up with. My monthly revenue had hit $185,000 by October, $267,000 by November, $312,000 by December. That was when things got genuinely complicated. I was now running a business that was growing faster than I could scale the operation. Rachel, my first employee, was working 60-hour weeks just trying to keep up with onboarding. David was doing the same with integrations. I had 3 other people, all part-time, all working way too much. I was burning through people faster than I could hire them because the growth was unsustainable at the current staffing level. In January 2026, I hired my first official full-time employee beyond Rachel. His name was Kevin, and he was a 35-year-old software engineer who'd spent 5 years working in SaaS companies building platforms that scaled. I paid him $95,000 a year, a real salary, not a contractor fee. It was more than I'd been taking home myself, but it was necessary. Kevin's job was to help me architect the software platform for scale, because what I'd built for 50 clients needed to be rebuilt slightly differently for 200 clients. The system that worked for Meridian and Harman and Simon, elegant and efficient at smaller scale, wouldn't work for 200 simultaneous users. The database queries would time out, the server would slow down, Users would leave. I needed someone who understood how to redesign systems from the ground up for scale, and I needed them immediately. I also made Rachel the official head of customer success. I gave her a raise to $65,000 a year, a significant increase from what I'd been paying her, and hired 2 people under her to build out the customer success function. By March 2026, I wasn't working in my office building code anymore. I was working in meetings. Meetings with Kevin about technical architecture and database redesign. Meetings with Rachel about customer satisfaction and retention. Meetings with Patricia about expansion into new association networks. Meetings with other association leaders who'd heard about my software and wanted to talk partnership. I was spending my days responding to opportunities instead of building the product myself. Every hour I spent in a meeting was an hour I wasn't writing code. But every meeting was a conversation about growth. This was the moment where I had to decide if I was going to be a founder or a CEO. There's a difference. A founder builds the thing, sits down, puts headphones on, writes code, solves technical problems. A CEO makes sure the thing scales. A CEO removes obstacles. A CEO makes decisions about people and money and strategy and direction. A founder just wants to tinker. I had to decide if I was ready to let go of building the software line by line and focus on building an organization that could scale. It wasn't easy to decide, but I made it. My revenue had hit $387,000 per month by March. My total customer base was 219 facilities across multiple manufacturing sectors and geographic regions. I had 12 employees, good people, smart people, people who believed in what we were building. I had a proper office space in downtown Boise with room to grow. I had legitimate business infrastructure, accounting systems, contracts, insurance, all the things that separate a real business from a hobby. I was no longer running a side business. I was running a company, a real company, my company. In April 2026, my total contract value crossed $2.5 million. This wasn't the same as revenue. Contract value meant the total amount my customers were committed to paying over the life of their agreements. When you have 219 customers paying $1,500 per month on average annual contracts, your total contract value is approximately $2.5 million in committed revenue. It's not money in the bank. It's money your customers have promised to give you. But in the SaaS world, contract value is the metric that matters, because it represents the long-term viability of your business. It happened on April 8th. I was sitting in my office looking at the dashboard we'd built to track customer metrics. I watched the number flip from $2.4997 million to $2.5012 million. A single new customer signing up, a facility in Ohio that made automotive components, pushing us over the line. I actually watched it happen. The system updated in real time, and I saw the number change. I didn't tell anyone immediately. I just sat there. The thing that Derek Paulson had laughed at, "You're never going to make it work, you just don't have the right skills," had just exceeded $2.5 million in contracted value. I thought about that meeting in Victor's office. I thought about Derek's confidence. I thought about the moment when he said, "I didn't understand modern business." And I thought about how Derek was right about one thing. I didn't understand business the way he did. I understood it the way people who actually build things understand it. I understood it from the ground up. I understood problems because I'd lived them. I understood solutions because I'd implemented them. I called Sarah at work and told her the news. She was between patient rounds. I could hear the ICU in the background, beeping machines, quiet urgency, people working to save lives every single day. "Mark, that's incredible. Do you realize what you've actually built?" "Yeah," I said, "I'm starting to." I hung up and I sat in silence for a while. I thought about everything it had taken to get to this exact moment. The 31 years at Northridge, the 2 crises, the 60-hour weeks, the layoffs I'd had to do personally, the relationships I'd built with suppliers and customers and employees, the software I'd developed in my basement on nights and weekends. The moment Derek laughed at me, the moment I walked out. The 18 months of building something from absolutely nothing. All of it, everything, led to this single moment on April 8th, when a customer in Ohio clicked a button and signed a contract. During those months, I'd kept waiting for Derek's changes to destroy everything I'd built at Northridge. I kept checking the news. I kept looking at the company online. I kept wondering if Victor had sold it, or if the restructuring had worked out the way he wanted. I wanted to know if I'd been right about the risk. I wanted to know if Derek's theory had failed without me there to protect the company from it. Around the same time I was signing with Patricia's Association in May 2025, Northridge's website announced a strategic transition. By August 2025, I found out through a LinkedIn post that Northridge had been acquired by a larger manufacturing conglomerate. The acquisition was described as a merger, which meant Victor had been bought out. Derek Paulson was listed as a VP at the newly consolidated entity. The article mentioned that Derek would be leading the integration of the company's operations into the larger entity. I felt nothing. Not vindication, not anger, not even curiosity. It was just a thing that had happened to another company I used to be part of. Victor had gotten his exit. Derek had gotten his promotion. The employees, the ones I'd trained, the ones I'd cared about, the ones I'd kept employed through the 2008 crisis, would be folded into a larger corporation with different ways of doing things. That was sad, but it wasn't my problem anymore. What I felt instead was completely absorbed by my own business. I had 219 customers. I had employees who believed in me. I had momentum. The past wasn't my concern anymore. The email came on April 9th, the next year. Subject line, I'd been thinking about something you said. From Victor Kessler. I stared at it for 10 seconds before opening it. Mark, a colleague sent me an article this morning about a manufacturing software company that's disrupting the industry. Said it was designed by someone who understands the niche better than anyone else. Took me a moment to realize who they were talking about. I looked at your LinkedIn. Castellano Manufacturing Systems. 219 customers in less than 2 years. Projected to be doing multiple millions by the end of 2026. You built that. I won't insult you by saying I knew you had it in you. Obviously, I didn't. Derek was very confident that you couldn't succeed at something like that you didn't have the skills, that you didn't understand modern business, that your way of thinking was outdated. I listened to him because he seemed to know things I didn't. He had credentials, he had theories, he had confidence. But Mark, you were running a $42 million company. You knew exactly what you were doing. You understood what businesses actually needed. You just worked for me instead of for yourself. I made a terrible decision letting you go. Not for Northridge. It turns out the company we built was worth enough to sell for a significant amount of money. Derek's changes didn't destroy it. But I made a terrible decision for you. For what it's worth, and I know it probably doesn't matter, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't believe in you. I'm sorry I listened to someone's theory instead of trusting someone's actual results. I'm sorry I made you small, because it made it easier for me to imagine a future where I wasn't dependent on you. You didn't need me. You never did. I'm watching what you're building. I hope you know that. Victor. I read it 3 times. The first time I was looking for something, some way to feel vindicated, some way to feel like Derek had been proven wrong, some way to make this email the final chapter where I could stand on the mountain and look down at everyone who doubted me. The second time I was looking for something to be angry about, something that would let me feel like Victor deserved to feel bad, something that would justify the lean months when Sarah's parents brought us groceries, something that would justify the fear. The third time I wasn't looking for anything. I was just reading what he wrote. The truth is, Victor's email didn't matter in the way I thought it might. It didn't change my life. It didn't give me closure on Northridge. It didn't undo the years I'd spent building something for someone else while they took the credit and the equity. It didn't validate the moment when Derek laughed on the way out the door. It didn't erase the hurt of being pushed aside after 31 years of loyalty. It didn't bring back the time I spent building something that I'd never own. But it did confirm something I'd been understanding slowly, piece by piece, over the previous 18 months. The success wasn't about proving anyone wrong. The success was real. The people I'd hired, the customers I'd served, the problems I'd solved, those were all actually real. Rachel had built a customer success team from nothing and kept customers happy, even when we were growing too fast to fully support them. Kevin had architected a system that was handling 200 customers without crashing, redesigning the database structure from the ground up to handle scale. The 219 companies using my software had saved collectively millions of dollars in avoided defects and optimized operations. Tom at Meridian had told me that the software had saved them over $400,000 in the past year alone. Simon at Cascade had become one of my biggest advocates, referring other companies to me. None of that required Victor to apologize. None of that required Derek to admit he was wrong. None of that required external validation. It was just real, and I'd built it. I wrote back. I kept it short. Victor, I appreciate you saying that. I meant it when I told you I was sorry you felt that way. I wasn't being sarcastic. I genuinely was sorry that you didn't believe in what we could do. But I wasn't sorry about walking away. That was the right decision. And I'm not writing this to make you feel worse about it. I'm just telling you the truth. You built something good with Northridge. You created a company that employed 164 people and generated $42 million in revenue. That's real. You did that. I helped, but you did it. And now you've sold it and you're wealthy. That's good. But you were afraid of someone else's success, and you let that fear make a decision for me. I'm not angry about that. I'm just sad about it. I'm sad that it took Derek laughing at me to make me understand that I had something worth building on my own. I hope Northridge continues to do well. I hope Derek's theories work out. You both got what you wanted. I'm glad I got what I needed. Mark. I hit send, and then I deleted his email. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to keep looking at it. It wasn't my story anymore. It was his. And his story wasn't my concern. What was my concern was the 219 customers counting on my software to run better operations. What was my concern was Rachel and Kevin and the other people who'd built their careers on what we were creating. What was my concern was the next 300 customers we'd add over the next year. What was my concern was making sure the architecture scaled correctly. What was my concern was building something that would last. In April 2026, exactly 30 days after turning down the VP position, my company had exceeded $2.5 million in contract value. We had more qualified leads in the pipeline than we could handle. We were profitable. We were growing faster than I could scale. We had turned down 3 acquisition inquiries because I wanted to see how far we could take this. We were on track to do $5 million in annual recurring revenue by the end of the year. This was no longer a side project. This was a company. I was 54 years old. I'd already had one career. I'd already spent 31 years building something for someone else while they took the credit and the equity. Now I was building something for myself and for people who believed in what we were doing. Rachel, who'd quit her marketing job. Kevin, who'd left SaaS to help me scale. And the others who believed too. And nobody, no consultant, no theory, no person standing in a nice suit with credentials, could tell me it wasn't possible. Because I'd already done it. In 18 months, I'd proved that Derek was wrong. That night, Sarah and I sat on the back porch of our house in Boise. The mountains were clear against the sky. The winter had broken. It was that moment in April when you can feel spring actually becoming real. "Do you feel different?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "I don't know if I feel happy about what happened at Northridge. I think I'll always feel like I should have seen it coming. But I feel clear now. I feel like I did the right thing." "You did," she said. "It's strange," I said. "If Victor hadn't fired me, I'd probably still be running operations at Northridge, making good money, comfortable. believing that was my ceiling. "But you're not that person," Sarah said.
"No, I'm not. I'm not anymore."
We sat in silence for a while, watching the light change across the valley. The thing I've learned over the past 18 months is that success isn't about vindication. It's not about proving someone wrong or proving someone right. Success is about looking at your work and knowing you did it right. It's about having people who trust you. It's about building something that solves a real problem in the real world. Derek Pawson was wrong. Not because his theory was wrong. Plenty of his ideas were probably fine in their own context. Big companies probably do need to be faster and more efficient. But he was wrong about me and about my idea. He was wrong because he didn't understand that theory without experience is just words. He was confident about something he'd never actually built. He'd never spent 30 years learning precision manufacturing from the ground up. He'd never had to lay off people and then rehire them. He'd never had to negotiate with suppliers when a company went bankrupt. He'd never built a business. And he was standing in the way of someone who had actually built things. But the vindication wasn't in proving him wrong. I didn't need to watch him fail to feel good about myself. The vindication was that it didn't matter. I was building something whether he believed in it or not, whether he ever admitted he was wrong or not. In 18 months, I'd gone from walking out of a company I'd spent 31 years building to creating a company that was approaching $5 million in annual recurring revenue. I'd hired 12 good people. I'd served 219 customers who genuinely depended on my software to run better operations. I'd done something that the smartest guy in the room said was impossible. And I'd done it by doing the simplest thing there is to do. I solved a problem that actually existed. I served customers who actually needed help. I built something that worked. I showed up every day and I made it better. I didn't wait for permission. I didn't wait for validation. I didn't wait for someone to believe in me. I just started. That's not an impossible idea, that's just work. That's just the thing I've known how to do for 35 years now, since I was 19 years old and someone gave me an actual chance to prove myself. The only difference is this time, I was giving the chance to myself.